The first week of 2025 has been pretty wild, and I don't think we should trust much of anything right now, to be honest. It's a nagging feeling, you know? I just can't shake it. It appears as though we're living through a masterclass in psychological warfare. In fact, I'm pretty sure we're in the middle of multiple psyops. And there just might be more on the horizon too. We could just be in the opening act to a series of dark and mysterious events leading up to inauguration. So keep your eyes open, because we might be in for a show. If you missed my last video, I was talking about the notion of chaos governance. The concept that turmoil, be it cultural, economic, or through acts of war, terrorism, and even pandemics, it's all ripe for exploitation. It's the sinister art of harnessing instability for nefarious ends. Maybe these situations are just opportunities, seized with the cynical mantra of never let a good crisis go to waste. Or maybe, just maybe, they're entirely orchestrated for control. Either way, the point is that any crisis like that can be manipulated in many different ways. However, there is a pattern. After the dust settles, we're always worse off and have less freedom. In the last video, as an example, we talked about this clip right here.
Here's the reason why we need to care about this stuff, Nicole, is that we have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. It's in the cattle, it's in the milk, and that's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. We've had SARS in 2002, SARS-2, COVID-19 in 2019. And we know these viruses are jumping from bats to people thousands of times a year, but there's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, where I am here in Texas. So we're expecting dengue and possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever. And there's more. Then we have all this sharp rise in vaccine preventable diseases going up because of, in part, the anti-vaccine activism that's so prominent right now. We have a fivefold rise in pertussis cases, whooping cough over the last year, 15 measles outbreaks this year. We've got polio that's been in the wastewater in New York State. All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration. We need a really good team to be able to handle this.
From bird flu to coronaviruses, he warns it's all going to come crashing down on the new administration. And it really seems like the political class figured out that pandemics are the ultimate political weapon. From locking down society to push through a new economic system, to using it to control political opposition, and they could even use it to hobble an incoming administration. It does it all, and I get the feeling they know it. And what do you know, right on schedule, after the holidays, they began seeding the public consciousness with fear about a bird flu pandemic. They even brought out that psychopath, Leana Wen, again.
There are two main things that they should be doing in the days that they have left. The first is to get testing out there. I feel like we should have learned our lesson from COVID that just because we aren't testing, it doesn't mean that the virus isn't there. It just means that we aren't looking for it. We should be having rapid tests, home tests available to all farm workers, to their families, for the clinicians taking care of them, so that we aren't waiting for public labs and CDC labs to tell us what's bird flu or not. And the second very important thing is, this is not like the beginning of COVID where we were dealing with a new virus, we didn't have a vaccine. There actually is a vaccine developed already against H5N1. The Biden administration has contracted with manufacturers to make almost 5 million doses of the vaccine. However, they have not asked the FDA to authorize the vaccine. There's research done on it. They could get this authorized now and also get the vaccine out and to farm workers and to vulnerable people. I think that's the right approach, because we don't know what the Trump administration is going to be doing around bird flu. If they have people coming in with anti-vaccine stances, could they hold up vaccine authorization? If they don't want to know how much bird flu is out there, could they withhold testing? I mean, that's a possibility. And I think the Biden administration in the remaining days should get testing and vaccines widely available, so that at least it empowers state and local health officials and clinicians to do the right thing for their patients.
Dr. Wen, is bird flu in humans super dangerous?
Well, the World Health Organization estimates that in prior outbreaks of the bird flu, that the mortality rate is 52%. 52%. However, in this most recent outbreak, it seems that most cases have been mild, and maybe some people even have asymptomatic infection. But the question is, we don't know what happens when bird flu affects more vulnerable individuals. People infected so far in the US have been mainly farm workers who are working, presumably generally healthy, as opposed to what happens when you get to children, to pregnant women, to older individuals with chronic illnesses. We don't know how deadly, how dangerous bird flu is going to be for those individuals. And again, that's one more reason why we don't want it to spread and acquire more mutations. One more reason why we don't want it to spread and acquire more mutations.
All right. I mean, I can't explain what a throwback this is. It reminds me of being in the COVID era when you would constantly have to like read between the lines, and we would do this like regularly. This is what we would always do through the height of COVID, was like play clips like this and then be like, pay attention to what Fauci just really said. Like, pay attention to what she just really said, because she sandwiches it in between this absolute nonsense fear-mongering. So it starts with like, well, the World Health Organization has estimated it could be up to 52%. Do you know how scary 52% is? Oh my God, imagine 52% just killing everybody. And then like in there's a little nugget. All the cases we've seen have been very mild and not a problem at all. But it hasn't hit old people and babies and this, and it's just like the way you're like, and then they have the nerve to be like, and this is the science. Like, you're not doing science. Science would be giving a very clear answer right there. Nope, seems like nothing to worry about. All of the recent outbreaks have been mild. In fact, a lot of people who get it are completely asymptomatic. Where have we heard that before? But you just can't imagine like having no shame while you're making this, but like you're famous for getting the vaccine on COVID all wrong and selling all of the bullshit. And then you're coming right back on now to advocate another vaccine for a thing that is not even a problem? It's unbelievable.
However, as we start getting more and more stories about bird flu jumping to humans and how another pandemic might be right around the corner, remember, this all started with the usual suspects. And I quote, "The US government was collaborating with Chinese scientists to figure out a way to make bird flu more infectious, more deadly, and how they could enable it to jump species." And what do you know, right after that story came out, we started getting stories about bird flu jumping to cattle, and then to dairy farmers, and now it's mutating and could progress to human transmission. So, it kind of sounds like they got their wish, doesn't it?
Concerning new CDC report on the first severe human case of bird flu in the U.S. Samples taken from a patient in Louisiana show mutations that could make it easier for this virus to spread from person to person. Now, right now, there's no evidence it's been passed along to anyone else, and the CDC says risk to the public remains low. But experts warn a single mutation like this could potentially lead to another pandemic.
Also, keep in mind that the Gates Foundation was getting in on the bird flu magic as well. And at this rate, people will soon believe that the word research is interchangeable with sabotage.
I do think this gain-of-function research and the risk that we have for what I call scientific arrogance of creating these pathogens, and I'm very concerned about bird flu, not from nature, even though it's trying hard to learn how to infect humans. It's now in over 28 mammals in the United States. We obviously went into dairy cows, and now it's gone into pigs, which as a virologist makes me nervous because the flu virus, when it replicates, has 6 different pieces to replicate, and if you get 2 flu viruses in the same animal, they can recombine. And the one that usually recombines to give us human flu viruses is usually the pig. And so we went from dairy cattle now into pigs. I'm worried that we can get some combinations. And if we do get a bird flu virus that knows how to go human to human efficiently, we're going to have a catastrophic pandemic. There's no doubt about it. That said, I don't think that that's the greatest threat. I think the greatest threat is the gain-of-function research. And I was very disappointed that NIH just awarded in the senator's state, maybe him and Rand Paul will look at it, into Wisconsin. They just awarded the University of Wisconsin money to help take bird flu and teach it how to infect humans. All right, I just think that's really stupid, okay? These are the same scientists that were involved in teaching COVID how to infect humans. So I think that's the greatest threat to me.
So you might want to keep your eyes open because they might try version 2.0. In fact, we just got word about the first bird flu death in the United States.
Tonight we are learning more about the bird flu and what it could mean for humans. The first human bird flu death was reported this week. It was a man in Louisiana who had underlying conditions. Dr. Robert Murphy, a professor of infectious disease at Northwestern University, telling us so far that this bird flu is only affecting people who have had contact with sick birds. But he says it is possible the bird flu could follow the same path as COVID-19.
And yeah, isn't that great? The patient that died was over the age of 65 and was reported to have underlying medical conditions. Sounds familiar. Sounds real familiar, doesn't it? Now the CDC says that there's genetic changes in the virus that could make it more easily spread to humans.
Griff, the CDC says a genetic analysis indicated that a mutation of the virus was discovered inside a Louisiana patient. This person contracted the first severe case of H5N1 in the nation. The patient is one of the 66 confirmed bird flu cases in humans in 10 states across the U.S., including California, Michigan, and Texas. There was no evidence that the Louisiana patient passed the illness to anyone else. Health experts say the genetic analysis from the Louisiana patient indicates the virus evolved in a way that can make it more transmissible to humans because it more easily binds to the cell receptors in the upper respiratory tract.
However, if the word pandemic isn't scary enough anymore, well, they moved on to a new one, or they're trying one out, the quad-demic.
Mask mandates are coming back in many parts of the U.S. due to concerns over a so-called quad-demic. Experts say a combination of flu, COVID, RSV, and neurovirus after the holidays is causing a sharp increase in hospitalizations in cities such as Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. While more people getting sick after the holidays isn't new, it's happening as less people get vaccinated overall. And that's due to what some call a COVID hangover.
Yeah, the quad-demic, huh? Oh yeah, and there seems to be a bunch of new pathogens forming in China too, so there you go. Overall, the message is clear. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. And of course, give up your rights. Because that's what it always comes down to, doesn't it? It's all about getting them to that 2030 date. They want to use the sweet lullaby of inevitable chaos to nudge us into the pens they have so meticulously prepared. As I talked about in my last video, nothing beats the drama of an act of God. Be it pandemics or climate change, I guess. You know, the whims of Mother Nature herself. And there's a reason. These scenarios are perceived as wild, untamed, and unpreventable. It paints a picture of a world spiraling out of control, but oh, it's also very convenient, because it also justifies the state's iron grip and this Orwellian demand for societal obedience. Yeah, they weave these tales of doom to explain why our freedoms might be tucked away for safekeeping, why we must swallow drastic changes like bitter medicine. It's all to give us a reason for the chaos, a justification for government action, and a beacon of hope for recovery. It's the perfect setup for economic transitions to come in under the guise of collective survival. You see, people crave an explanation for why their world is crumbling around them. They need to see, if nothing else, that elusive light at the end of the tunnel. Or, at the very least, the glow of their screens promising a brighter future. Otherwise, why would they obey? Well, enter the utopian language of the 2030 vision, sweet as honey, promising a paradise where chaos once reigned. It's the carrot dangling right before us. And at the same time, it's ushering in massive economic changes too. They're trying to force the world to move away from traditional banking to the new world of central bank digital currencies. They want to shift our currency away from the black gold of oil to carbon. And with each and every shift, they find new inventive ways to dip into our pockets, turning taxation into some kind of bullshit art form. And if I'm going to make that analogy, it's not good art, alright? It's modern art. It's the banana taped to a wall type of deal. It's insulting. So imagine a world where chaos is not just a storm that we have to weather, but the very wind beneath the wings of global bureaucracy. And really, you don't have to imagine it, because you're living it. Welcome to 2025. Alright, let's move on to the terror attacks. Now, this section is really just me trying to stay up to date on everything, so here's how it's going to work. I'm basically just going to go through everything I know about these events, and you can let me know if I got something wrong, missed anything, or if you have some theories, be sure to leave them in a comment. I did my best to verify everything, but you know, it's tough these days. Anyway, let's get started. In the heart of New Orleans, at the dawn of a new year, a tragic event unfolded on Bourbon Street, as you all know, where a Texas man, Shamsu Din Jabbar, drove a rented pickup truck into a crowd, killing at least 14 people and injuring about 30 others. He was a U.S. Army veteran and was subsequently killed by police after he opened fire on them with an AR. An ISIS flag was found in the truck, so when the FBI initially claimed it wasn't related to terrorism, well, everyone scoffed. Explosive devices were also discovered in the area. Though initially there was confusion about accomplices, the FBI later concluded that Jabbar acted alone. In fact, he scoped out the area while wearing meta-augmented reality glasses, checking out security installations and potential locations to place IEDs. And you are seeing that footage right now. So this terrorist served in the US Army between 2007 and 2020, where he worked as an IT and human resource specialist, reaching the rank of staff sergeant before his honorable discharge. Since entering the private sector as a civilian, he was doing pretty damn good compared to my standards. He was earning about 120 grand a year, dabbled in real estate, and a few other things. However, his life was marred by personal turmoil, divorce, accusations of domestic violence, and it paints a complex portrait of the man behind the wheel. But let's call a spade. He was a piece of shit. Although that bit of information does give us an idea about his motive. Now, this is pure speculation, alright? But his rocky family life and his video detailing why he wanted to target non-believers could be connected. I would assume that he came to a misguided conclusion, that if his family was more devout in their Islamic faith, then perhaps his wife would have never left him in the first place. So I believe his personal inadequacies were exacerbated and conflated with his religious belief, leading to resentment and disillusionment. But what do I know? I'm just speculating. Although, I will say, he did claim he wanted to kill his family first, but thought that might detract from his quote-unquote message. And what was his message? Well, apparently that we're in a war between believers and non-believers, I guess. Now, a few things that caught my attention. His military background is very suspect, as his role in human resources and IT doesn't explain how he acquired knowledge regarding explosives. He obviously did not acquire that knowledge through military training, so it seems like he got some outside help to me. Feds, terror rings, I don't know. Time will tell. They did recently hold a press conference saying the investigation is going international, meaning there's more to the story.
Thanks to information provided by you, the public, this investigation is crossing state and international borders as our agents follow leads in Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Tampa, Florida, and internationally.
And then we have a fire at the Airbnb where he was staying, and it's being investigated for possible connections to his plan or as an attempt to destroy evidence. Was the fire started by him? Did he have it set to a timer or something like that? Or did somebody else start the fire to cover their tracks? But let's talk about the investigation for a moment. The way the FBI handled the scene, allowing media tours before securing evidence, is beyond suspicious. You can see the footage of the house tour playing right now. So yeah, we have electronics and laptops not being logged, a Quran open to a page on martyrdom. It's all a little bit too staged. You know, shouldn't the place be on forensic lockdown, right? It reminds me of when they hosed down the roof after the Trump assassination attempt. It just makes no sense. But get this. Then, after letting reporters in, the bomb squad had to go back because they believed they might have quote-unquote missed something. And then the feds had to go back a second time because, as it was reported, they forgot to tag evidence. Yeah, it's all absurd. However, the explosives are going to be crucial because he used a rare compound, suggesting either specialized knowledge or access to unusual materials. So, we're not getting the full story, that's for sure. But yeah, these explosives are going to be a key component to the entire case. And I wouldn't be surprised if we stop getting details about it, because it might paint a picture the feds don't want you putting together. They found bomb-making materials and chemicals inside his home in Houston, indicating that he might have assembled everything there. But here's the thing, as I said, it's a rare explosive compound, and the exact source of those materials are not detailed in any report. So, we just don't know yet. But let's get into the quote-unquote conspiracies for a moment. Some believe the feds are actively trying to cover up intelligence failures. Some people believe that the FBI might have been running an entrapment operation, where they could have provided Jabbar with the means, like the rare explosive compounds, or encouragement to carry out the attack, only for it to spiral out of control. Yeah, or worse, they intentionally allowed the attack to happen to justify increased surveillance, militarization, to manipulate public opinion, or to influence domestic policies when Trump comes into office. Now, you might be thinking that's absurd, could never happen. I don't know, the entrapment scenario is more common than you might think.
Court records raise new questions about an undercover agent. Good evening, I'm Clarice Tinsley. First on Fox News at 5:30. The undercover FBI agent spent months infiltrating ISIS sympathizers who wanted to wage terror. His mission brought him to the Curtis Culwell Center in Garland on May 3rd, 2015. It was the night two gunmen tried to shoot their way into a controversial Muslim cartoon contest. Now, the attackers were killed, but not because of the undercover agent, and that's raised many questions. Fox 4's Sean Rabb has the story.
Suspicion surrounds the undercover FBI agent who did not engage Elmer Simpson and Nadir Sufi as they opened fire.
So it's pretty clear that from day one, the intent was to encourage some kind of action at the Garland Event Center.
Houston attorney Trenton Roberts represents Garland ISD security officer Bruce Joyner, wounded in the shootout. Days before the attack, the undercover FBI agent was communicating with gunman Elmer Simpson, telling him to tear up Texas.
It does look like his intent was to document a terrorist attack in order to advance himself within the terrorist organization of ISIS.
Seconds before the shooting, the same undercover agent took pictures of the south entrance to the Culwell Center where the shootout went down. These are black and white reproductions from the court record. In FBI documents, the unidentified agent says he saw the shooters get out of their car right in front of him, the driver holding an assault rifle and raising it up, and he heard many shots fired. The agent quickly drove away.
So, why don't we follow that line of thinking, that it's a manufactured crisis or a never let a good crisis go to waste type of situation? As we talked about in the last video regarding chaos governance, what's the typical strategy? Well, you create the conditions in which a crisis can occur. It's done by passing policies that are obviously terrible and clearly void of common sense. And then once that inevitable tragedy happens, you exploit it to advance censorship and to ramp up domestic surveillance. Now you might be asking, do we have any proof that it's being used to push for more domestic surveillance? And yes, we do have that. The New Orleans district attorney is calling for more UK-like surveillance in the aftermath of the attack. As you might know, the UK installed CCTV cameras and facial recognition to build out their surveillance grid and to watch over everybody.
Things are going to have to change. Just after 9/11, I remember a time when I could run from my car to the gate to catch a flight. After 9/11, we realized we need to do things very, very differently so that we can all arrive at our destination safely. I think you're going to see a lot of things change in the city of New Orleans. And actually, I think you're going to see a lot of things change in this country in terms of how we handle large-scale events, where there is pedestrian access and where vehicles are allowed. I think you're going to see things change in terms of the level of surveillance that we have in this country. We've pushed back against some of that, but when you look at places like the UK and other European places where CCTV is very commonplace and used proactively so that it can look for signs or indications of an attack, I think you're going to start seeing those things in this city because I'm going to be pushing for them, and you're going to probably see them in a lot of other places that are destination cities like the city of New Orleans.
I'd like to take a moment to remind you that Palantir used New Orleans as a testing ground for their pre-crime initiative. It got shut down, but they might try to use this situation to get back into the draconian surveillance game, and afterward, maybe even try to roll it out in every state. It seems like they might set up the safety versus freedom argument once again. Also, very, very predictable. Now I gotta mention the last video one more time, because as more time passes, it seems like I might have been on point. I was talking about how the new fear campaign over diseases could be a way for big pharma and places like the CDC to justify their existence and budgets when facing massive cuts. The same could apply here too. You've got Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard hopefully getting ready to make major reforms at the FBI and intel agencies in general. And then suddenly we have multiple major events that justify the budgets of those agencies. And it could even be used to increase their power over the domestic population. As they say, timing is everything. And on top of that, the two attackers being US citizens and military members could even justify further surveillance of the domestic population rather than, international. Think, the Patriot Act. Yeah, convenient, real convenient. However, some are speculating that this is just the beginning of a wave of terror attacks.
We've spoken to both of you on this program in particular about the heightened threat environment many times. And back in June, when there was that arrest of those 8 men from Tajikistan who were ISIS linked, we spoke in depth about that. Chair Turner, shortly after that, you said on this program, we have terrorists that are actively working inside the United States that are a threat to Americans. Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now?
Well, I think the issue of cells, and you and I were talking about that at the beginning of the show, are there individuals that are affiliated with ISIS and terrorist groups and organizations that have crossed the border and they're inside the United States? Director Wray, FBI director, has said so. We certainly have intelligence that says so. I agree with his assessment. Jim has also seen it. He's testified before our committee publicly of that fact. Those individuals are working in conjunction with ISIS with the intention of harming Americans. The director has said it directly.
They are known to U.S. intelligence and law enforcement.
And we are working diligently to try to take them down, to prevent them from doing so. And that's why the director is publicly saying such. And that's what the new administration is going to be handed. The fact that these individuals are here, that we need to locate them, we need to remove them, we need to bring them to justice and prevent them from doing harm to America.
A ISIS sympathizer carried out a plan that was premeditated and killed American people. A terrorist attack on American soil, we have to take it seriously. We don't know all the facts yet, but we got to get down to the reality of the matter that we've had 400 ISIS smuggled people coming into our country that Department of Homeland Security told us about last summer, and 50 of them we don't know where they are. We don't know who they are or where they are, and we have to take that more seriously. I know President Trump will do.
And if that is the case, expect more of this to happen before inauguration or on inauguration. We are not done with this stuff yet. But alright, let's move on to the one in Las Vegas. Now for this one, I'm going to go over everything we know so far, some of the theories, and to get the full picture, I'll include the arguments from skeptics at the end. Make your own decision about it, but same as before, if you have a theory, let me know, because with both of these, I really have no idea. The Las Vegas bombing occurred on the same day as the one in New Orleans. A U.S. Army Green Beret on leave drove a rented Tesla Cybertruck packed with explosives to the Trump International Hotel. They claim he shot himself before the vehicle exploded, but on the video itself, I don't see a muzzle flash, plus, if you look closely, you can kind of see him moving right before the explosion. So, I don't know about the whole Desert Eagle to the Dome story, you know? Anyway, the explosion took him out and injured 7 people. The truck contained fireworks, mortars, gasoline, and camping fuel. Investigations are ongoing, with no definitive link found to the New Orleans attack, although both vehicles were rented from the app Turo. Unbelievably, his passport and military ID survived the explosion, which reminds me of the passports found in the wreckage of 9/11. At this point, you know, the US government, the military, SpaceX, and NASA, they should really just make their heat shields for space travel out of passports, because apparently they're indestructible. So anyway, as I said, he was an active duty Green Beret. He was a Special Forces communication specialist from 2006 to 2015, where he basically just established, maintained, and operated communication systems in support of operations. From there, he was a Special Forces intelligence and operations specialist from 2015 to 2024. This included a lot of stuff. It was intelligence gathering, analysis, operational planning, mission planning, conducting reconnaissance missions, participating in direct action, counterterrorism, and unconventional warfare operations. But then it gets very, very interesting with this one right here. In the last 3 months of his service until January 2025, leading right up to the event, he was in charge of the deployment and operation of remote and autonomous systems, which includes drones, robotics, and other advanced technology for surveillance or tactical operations. Now, alright, so he had an extensive background related to drones, which is really important context because apparently this was all about the drones in New Jersey. Yeah, he claims that was his main motive.
The nighttime flights began last month.
There's another one.
Swarms of them startling local residents.
And I see 2 big drones. They were propeller driven, going very slowly.
For almost a month now, drones, some as big as small cars, have been spotted flying over parts of New Jersey, near military facilities, weapon depots, even President-elect Donald Trump's Bedminster golf course. One Republican suggesting this on Fox News.
And he even claimed that he was being followed by the feds because he was trying to blow the whistle. So, key points to what he believed. Gravitic propulsion systems. He claimed that the drones over New Jersey were not conventional drones because they were using gravitic propulsion systems, basically anti-gravity. This suggests that he believed these were advanced, possibly military or extraterrestrial technology, capable of defying conventional physics. Now, if you're thinking that's not even possible, well, it is, because the Navy has patents related to it. You can find them for yourself. Alright, next up, he specifically stated that these drones were being operated by China. He believed that China was using this technology as some sort of show of force. He also believed that China was launching these drones from submarines in the Atlantic Ocean, and it's been happening for years, with the activity picking up recently. This points to his belief in a significant covert operation by China to demonstrate their military capability, or to conduct espionage. But there's more, because he said this technology wasn't new, implying that the United States had similar systems throughout history, indicating a long-standing hidden technological arms race. The Green Beret described these drones as the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed, highlighting his perception of an imminent or ongoing threat to the United States. So he claimed to have personal knowledge about this anti-gravity program, which could suggest that he was personally involved or had insider information. And considering he was placed in the drone program for the last 3 months with a top security clearance, well, it makes sense, I think. But here's where it gets strange. Well, this whole situation is strange, so I guess it just gets more strange. Anyway, he gave out coordinates to where this program is located, and the coordinates are to a building at Area 51. So, I don't know, I can't shake the feeling that we're being effed with, in one way or another. If I had to place a bet on this, I'd bet nothing is as it seems. And I don't know, it's all very interesting though, don't you think? I'm really into the whole zero-point energy theories, you know, Ashton Forbes, he's always blowing my mind on that stuff, so I'm intrigued to say the least. He got my attention, right? But, with that said, to get the full picture, we have to talk about the skeptics, as they have some questions over authenticity. So here's what some of them have said. Some of this took place on the app Signal, an encrypted messaging app, and they gave out a safety number as a method of verification to ensure no tampering. However, his safety number was changed, meaning that his account was being accessed from a different phone and a different SIM card.
People were saying that his Signal chat, his safety number changed. I don't know if you saw this on X, but it was all over X. Apparently his safety number on Signal changed. He messaged me on Signal. So I went on there to look myself to see if it changed, and sure enough, it had. On January 1st, after the bombing, after he was dead, his safety number changed. That's all he sent me. He said initial contact, and I gave a thumbs up, and his safety number changed at the bottom.
Look at that.
That's after he's dead. I don't know enough about Signal to know why that would happen. Somebody has to have manipulated that, though, and messed with it. Somebody had to have been in his account after the fact and done something for that to have changed.
What did the FBI say when you contacted him?
Not a lot. I gave him the story on...
Which leaves us with more questions. But there's more. You know those questions you get when you're signing into your banking information, like what's your first car, your first teacher, what street you grew up on, your first pet, that kind of thing? Well, apparently he tried to do that for himself. He claimed as a method of verification that his first car was a 2006 black Mustang. Turns out that's not true. His first car was a 1998 Mustang. He did have a 2008 black BMW, but that doesn't match the email either, so who knows. And if you were trying to use something like that to verify your identity, would you get it wrong? It kind of defeats the purpose, so I don't know, you might want to double check it before you put it out there. But I will say, on the other hand, if you're some sort of intelligence officer and you're working on this big psyop and you put this fake information out in the world, well, I don't think they would get that wrong either. You gotta double check this stuff. It's kind of information warfare 101. So either way you look at it, somebody screwed up. Either the guy himself or the intel agents that are screwing with our heads. And I've even heard whispers of an encrypted header on the email. That one I haven't been able to verify or check into yet, so I don't know. Anyway, I'm really curious about what you all think about this stuff because I honestly have no idea what to believe. And as I've said, both of these cases are very strange, and nothing quite adds up. So, let me know. But I'll leave you with this. Keep your eyes open, not just for the next crazy thing to happen, but for the opportunities to change course. Here's to a year where we turn their chaos into a catalyst for positive change. Here's to 2025. Cheers. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals, or you could use PayPal. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.